Hello and welcome to what is the longest of 3 videos on curing Coppas. Now this particular video starts out with the bag to cure. That's the phase of it. The next one is going to be actually the hanging and netting, or however we do it, the stuffing, hanging, netting, and then the next one after that will be the actual reveal, where we get to see our efforts of everything that we've done over the past 2 months. I reference the FSIS manual in here and give you that little cut. It is a straightforward, simple thing, and I know the first one is a little bit long, but it should give you a little bit of confidence to proceed. Oh, I did want to point one thing out. If you're going to do any kind of dry aging, whether it be beef or sausage, if you're going to do any salt curing or even fermenting of sausages and salamis, wash your hands. I know this is silly. People say, well, just put on a glove. Well, you still have the same problem. If your hands are dirty when they go in the glove, as soon as you touch something other than what the glove touched, the gloves are dirty. So I just use my hand. I'm clean, and I'm not feeding anyone else, maybe my son or something like that, or maybe a friend. But wash your hands, wash the outside of the package before you put it on a cut board or something like this, because this has been handled by someone and it's got contaminants on the outside. So make sure everything is washed up and clean before you touch it, because you don't want to actually put any organisms into the meat or on the meat that weren't there before. Now I do that, wash my hands, wash the surface, wash the bag, dry them off, then I pull the piece of meat out and wash it in chlorinated water so that the chlorine may help take a little something off of the surface. So what is a coppa? Well, like most Italian cuts that we hear of, they actually refer more to the part of the animal than how they're actually prepared. Now sometimes they are prepared, and a lot of times they have their names taken from the region, like agave wine or something like that, or a Merlot wine, which is a different country entirely. But you get the idea. They're known as a regional name versus what they actually are. Many parts, like the coppa, are dealing with the part of the animal that they come from. Now here we have the skin side out. And this is fat on this side, obviously. And here we have toward the internal portion of the animal. Okay, now how do you know if you want to make a coppa? What do you do in terms of that type of, I believe the word is salome, which means non-fermented. I don't know why anybody would ferment a coppa. I don't believe that's the traditional way they were stored. They're much like a Parma ham. They were just naturally dried, salted, dried, cured ham. So this happens to be from the neck region, from the upper leg actually, and the neck where it attaches to the body. And I don't think it's traditionally fermented. I don't know why you would do that, but some people do. So this represents the skin side, where the skin has been removed. We just have the outside fat layer. And if we look around, what side do we want to make a coppa with? Well, the way this pack happens to be laid out is a perfect example. Here is part of the shoulder blade right here showing, and here we have the fish gills, or whatever you want to call these. These are where the muscles attach to the vertebrae, and so in order to pull the neck at those angles, as the animal moves, they'll have a different muscle in that back strap that's attached, or because the back strap goes from the back of the animal all the way along the outside of the spine to the neck and to the skull. It's the same way on the other way around. Here is the fish gill side here, and then the bottom side, which goes to the shoulder, and sure enough, there is the bone there. So how does this work? Well, most of the time on a Scotch fillet or a Boston butt, what you'll find is just a little piece of bone. And this has been pretty depth for this video, and you'll end up having it, let's see, where's my bone? It should be on the fat side. There we go. We have a bone on each side that'll poke through. but you'll get just the tip of the scapula or the shoulder blade. And this little part here where this piece of tough cartilage is on the outside. And if we feel around on the bone side, you should be able to find it if it's not too big of a, let's see, where is that? It's probably about there for some reason. And this particular bone, I pulled a butt I thought was going to be a real nice one to get a big coppa out of, a big piece of neck muscle. And in fact, what it turned out, it would just cut awfully low. Because we're still looking at something about like that. They just happened to get the saw a little low on that particular butt when they processed the animal. Now, where it curves back goes to the back of the animal, and this is where they've cut to make that fourth primal cut where they cut the, they remove the head, they take off the hams, take off the shoulders, and then they split the center of the animal in half. And the top part they call the loin, and the bottom part they call the pork belly, although there'll be rib bones in both the top and the bottom. And of course, most things get their name from where they come from. Now, a picnic, if you were to get a picnic, the way you tell a picnic from a butt is you'll have a bone all the way through it on a picnic, because it is the leg. This actually is a left leg, because it would go like this in the animal. So we know this is a left front leg, because the bone comes forward and then comes back down and then back down toward the hock and the foot or the trot or whatever you might want to call it, depending on where you're from. So that's just a shoulder blade. Now some people, when they cut their coppas, depending on what they want to do with them, they will start on this side. They'll find out where that bone is on the other, and they'll just come on the other side and trim off to keep this portion, as much of this as they possibly can. And that works good if you're going to make a roast. See, here's the bone. Where's my bone? On the big side. Okay, so what they would do is they'd come through here and they would try to fillet on this side of it and come back to make the biggest piece of meat. Well, that's a little difficult to do if you want to make like the salami shaped tube, if you're going to stuff them in something. And remember, you're going to dry this meat, so it's going to take a while to do it. The thicker the piece of meat is, the longer it takes to thoroughly and properly dry. So if you're looking to do a casing or a netting, something along that, it works best too, and let's hope this will stay in focus, to cut them about like this. You see, because they naturally become, my hands are clean, and I don't serve, I'm not running an illegal kitchen. It'll allow you to bundle that up into a shape like that when it dries. And so that's what we have. I'm going to cut these and add them to this, and then I'll probably come back after I do that and salt them. But all I'm going to do is flip it on this side or the other, whichever side I can find that bone point in, depending on where my best view is, and then try to take about half of this right in about here so that I get that nice kind of round shape. If I stood it up on the end, you would see something probably about like that, because when I push in, I can actually feel the end of that shoulder blade right in there. So I'm going to take a piece like that and debone this, and of course then turn around and grind some of it, either make some sausage or I'll put it away in a vacuum bag whole for a different project. Okay, getting back to what some people call a coppa and what other people might call a coppa, depends on what you're going to do with it. Like I said, you have a couple. Obviously this piece of pork has been deceased for a while. It's beginning to want to wet up here at the seams, but we have a major muscle group that comes down against the back side of that shoulder blade. And if I was going to make a pork roast, like roll up like net it like a porchella or something like that, I would come up here and take this off, which would give me a much heavier piece of meat. Other people will find this other seam. Do you see this group right here? This is sort of, I think this is the extension of the back strip or the neck part that comes right through here there's my fish gills, and it cuts it, separates it down around here, and that does make a small Coppa, but I think it's probably more traditional. And of course you're going to trim off this fat, because this fat, if you net it, the net goes through this and it kind of makes kind of a little bit of an ugliness. So I do try to fillet or take that bit of fat off there, but I will leave it as big as I can get it, because I don't really care. You know, I want a solid piece of meat without the air spaces in there when I either hang it with a net or push it in one of those ham cases. So I just thought I'd throw that in as well. Again, you may do something different. It's up to you. Now, all I've done here is trim this a little bit. And see, there's our little bone, and we've got a little bit of that cartilage that pooches out there. We see where that end of that is. And what I'm going to do is just take my knife, and you can do it either which way. You can come this way or that way. It doesn't make any difference. But I've just kind of trimmed up this whole group to get as big of a well, I'm going to call it the Coppa as possible to keep the weight up. So I just find out about where that is, and I want it to be fairly parallel. And so that's probably 3 or so pounds, maybe 2.5, 3 pounds. Now what you see before you is common plain salt non-iodized and number 2 cure, the FSIS manual for home and small kitchen, the guidance that they give us for reduction of trichinella, the worm, the trichinosis, which is the response of having the trichinosis parasite in you. It says that I will use, for Coppa, I will use 4.5 pounds per hundredweight, or 4.5% of plain salt. So I've got that, and that's a minimum. And it tells me I need to hold it for 18 days minimum in a temperature no lower than 36 degrees, because we don't want to deactivate anything. We want to give this stuff time to work. So I have a small scale, and those proportions for Coppa number 1. I'm going to add some spices of my choice, and these I'll probably wrap, only because I have 2 different pans. I'll need 2 different pans. I'm just going to age these in one, and they're going to weep, and we're going to lose myoglobin and fluid to the bottom of the pan. And after I get it done that way for a while, I may separate 2 recipes off into 2 separate pans. But I'll show you how I denote what's in the pan when I first put it in the fridge after I get these things salted. Now, normally I wouldn't wrap these, be quite honest. If I'm only doing like 1 or 2 at a time, I would just simply salt it, put it in a container, and let it weep. And then after a while, drain the myoglobin and the other fluids off, whatever comes in the bottom, and drain that off, and then just retop it off with regular salt to make sure that I had enough salt. Maybe the spices wash off, not a big deal, just provided I keep enough salt on it. Now all these are done. 2 and 3 are the same recipe, because I think I'll give one away if these turn out and I don't poison myself. I'll probably save one to give to somebody. And 1 and 4 are different recipes. So the way I would normally do this, even if they weren't, if I had room where they wouldn't touch each other, I'd just lay them off in the container and let them just weep down to the bottom. How I keep up with them, because my process has begun. So what I've got going on here is my weights, my beginning weights. Now this is just the meat without any salt or anything on it, just the meat, all the fluid in it. And then if we turn it up on the side here, you see I got a white band. That white band, if these were not wrapped in plastic and labeled, this white band and this one little tab that sits here would be all I would need to identify 1, 2, 3, 4 as they go across from right to left. So we're just going to put these in the refrigerator and let them sit for 18 days. We may take them out depending on how well they weep. If they weep well because we got salt on them, we're going to take the salt and dump it off, the fluids off, the myoglobins off, so that we don't have them sitting in fluid. We have a little bit of a grate, as I've just shown you on the side, so that it will keep them out of that fluid. And there we go.